Crawford Goldsby, better known as Cherokee Bill, was an outlaw who operated in Indian Territory, leading a gang of thieves and murderers in the late 1800s. Crawford Goldsby was born in Fort Concho, Texas, on February 8, 1876, to St. George and Ellen Beck Goldsby. Bill's father was a mulatto from Alabama, a sergeant of the 10th United States Cavalry, and a Buffalo Soldier. His mother was a Cherokee freedman with African, Indian, and white ancestry. By age 7, his parents had separated, and his mother moved him to Fort Gibson in Indian Territory. Before long, he was sent to an Indian school in Kansas, where he attended for 3 years. Afterward, he was sent to an industrial school for Indians in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, for 2 years. However, despite attempts to provide him with a good education, some sources indicate that he could barely read and write. He left school at the age of 12 and returned to Fort Gibson. At this tender age, some say he killed his first man. Large for his age, Crawford confronted his brother-in-law, who had told him to feed some hogs. Grabbing a gun, Crawford shot and killed him, but was not prosecuted because of his age. A year later, his mother remarried, and young Crawford did not get along with his new stepfather. Around that time, he began associating with a bad crowd, drank liquor, and rebelled against any authority. 2 years later, at age 15, he moved from his mother's house to his sister Georgia and her husband. By the time he was 17, he was working a ranch, where he was said to have been well-liked. However, that would change the following year when he began his outlaw career, becoming one of the most dangerous and feared men in Indian Territory. In the spring of 1894, at 18, Cherokee Bill's crime spree began when he shot a man named Jake Lewis for beating up his younger brother. Though Lewis would later recover from his wounds, Bill was sure he had killed the man and fled for the Creek and Seminole Nations, where he joined up with outlaws Jim and Bill Cook. In June 1894, the trio was confronted at 14 Mile Creek near Tahlequah, Oklahoma, with a warrant for Jim Cook. In the inevitable shootout, Cherokee Bill shot and killed lawman Sequoia Houston. Jim Cook was also severely wounded, and the other two took him to Fort Gibson. Forced to leave him, he was later captured by lawmen. In the meantime, Cherokee Bill rode to his sister's home, Maud Brown, hiding from the law. When her husband, George Brown, a vicious drunk, began to beat Maud with a whip for not responding quickly enough to his orders, Bill walked up behind the man and shot him to death. Afterward, Bill Cook and Cherokee Bill rounded up a gang, mostly of black men with Indian blood, and began terrorizing Oklahoma. Starting small, they were first accused of whiskey charges and horse theft, before advancing to robbing banks, stores, and stagecoaches. The outlaws were ruthless, shooting anyone who got in their way. On July 16th, the gang allegedly robbed a man named William Drew and 2 days later held up the Frisco train at Red Fork. However, the gang escaped with very little due to the express messenger having the foresight to hide the money behind some boxes. On July 31st, 1894, the gang stole $500 from the Lincoln County Bank in Chandler, Oklahoma, killing one person and wounding others. In the process, one gang member, Elmer Luca, was shot and captured by authorities. Hotly pursued, the Cook gang was surrounded at a friend's home some 14 miles west of Sapulpa, Oklahoma, on August 2, 1894. During the volley of gunshots, one of the lawmen was shot and severely wounded. 2 gang members, Lon Gordon and Henry Munson, were killed, and Ad Berryhill was captured. The rest of the gang fled. Continuing with their outlaw deeds, they robbed the Parkinson and Company store in Okmulgee, Oklahoma on September 21st, getting away with over $600. Several weeks later, the gang got daring when on October 11th, they first robbed the depot of the Missouri Pacific Railroad in Claremore, Oklahoma, and less than 2 hours later, robbed the railroad agent at Chouteau. Some 9 days later, they wrecked the Kansas City and Pacific Express 5 miles south of Wagoner, Oklahoma, making off with the loot. While continuing their treachery through Oklahoma, Bill and several other gang members rode into Lenape on November 8th. While robbing the Schufelt and Son General Store, an innocent passerby named Ernest Melton heard the commotion and stuck his head in to see what was happening. His curiosity got him killed when Cherokee Bill raised his rifle and shot him in the head. Shortly afterward, United States Marshals got a tip to the outlaw's hiding place. However, Bill escaped when they attempted to capture him. Cherokee Bill persistently eluded the posse for a while, continuing to be hotly pursued. His final act along the outlaw trail happened on December 31st, 1894, when he acted alone to rob the train station at Nowata, Oklahoma. With the assistance of acquaintances who hoped to receive part of a $1,500 reward, he was captured on January 30th, 1895, and was soon delivered to Fort Smith, Arkansas, to await murder trial. On February 26th, Cherokee Bill was tried for the murder of Melton before Judge Parker, and found guilty. On April 13th, the seemingly unconcerned Crawford Goldsby was sentenced to death. Later, we find out why Cherokee Bill was so unconcerned, as he was planning a daring escape. Somewhere along the line, Goldsby had obtained a gun smuggled to him by a trustee. On July 26, 1895, he attempted a jailbreak. A gun battle soon broke out between him and the prison guards, and one of them was killed. The shootout resulted in a standoff when the guards could not disarm Cherokee Bill. However, also jailed with Bill was an even more notorious outlaw, that of Henry Starr. Old acquaintances, Starr offered to disarm Bill if the guards would promise not to kill Cherokee Bill afterward. The promise was made, and Henry entered the cell telling his friend that he had no chance of escape. Cherokee Bill gave up his revolver, and Starr turned it over to the guards. This incident helped Henry Starr to acquire his freedom later. In the meantime, Cherokee Bill's lawyer was working on an appeal, maintaining that Bill had not received a fair trial in the court of Judge Isaac Parker, who had characterized him as a bloodthirsty mad dog who killed for the love of killing, and as the most vicious of all the outlaws in Oklahoma Territory. However, the appeals were to no avail, and on March 17, 1896, federal officials hanged him before hundreds of spectators. Reportedly, when asked if he had any last words, he said, "I came here to die, not to make a speech." At the tender age of 20, Crawford Cherokee Bill Goldsby died at the end of a rope. His mother then took his remains back to the Fort Gibson area, where he is buried at the Cherokee National Cemetery. Over the years, Cherokee Bill was said to have killed 8 men. In conclusion, the life of Crawford Goldsby, also known as Cherokee Bill, paints a dark and violent portrait of the late 1800s American frontier. Born into a complex heritage of African, Indian, and white ancestry, his early years were marked by family turmoil and a lack of formal education. From an early age, signs of violence and rebellion began to emerge, foreshadowing his eventual descent into a life of crime. Cherokee Bill's criminal career commenced at a young age, and he quickly established himself as a feared and ruthless outlaw in Indian Territory. His association with the Cook Gang and a series of daring robberies, assaults, and killings demonstrated his willingness to embrace violence as a means of achieving his ends. His criminal activities escalated rapidly, leaving a trail of bloodshed and chaos in his wake. Despite his audacious attempts to evade capture, Cherokee Bill's reign of terror eventually came to an end. His arrest, trial, and eventual execution serve as a grim reminder of the swift justice that could await those who chose the path of violence and criminality during that era. The chilling nonchalance with which he faced his sentence further underscored his hardened nature. Cherokee Bill's story highlights the tumultuous nature of the frontier, where lawlessness often prevailed, and individuals like him exploited the chaos for personal gain. His brief but intense criminal career offers insight into the challenges faced by law enforcement and society as they grappled with maintaining order in an untamed land. Ultimately, Cherokee Bill's life serves as a stark reminder of the complexities of human nature and the impact of environment and circumstance on shaping individual destinies. His actions and their consequences are etched into history, a testament to the darker aspects of a bygone era.